Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello, everyone. Well, I have some more slimline cards to show you in this video. I love making slimline cards lately, and they're really fun to mail out to people because they're a bigger sized card. They fit into a legal sized envelope, and they're just kind of unexpected and fun. I'm slowly adding to my slimline card crafting collection, and I picked up a few things from the Not Too Shabby shop. This is from Trinity Stamps, and it's called Wonky Stitched Wilderness. I love wonky stitched dies, and when I saw this for a slimline card, I just had to have it. They also have some new stencils, and these will fit your slimline cards as well. Two come in this pack. You get a diagonal stripe and a thicker straight stripe. I'm going to create 3 slimline cards, and I'm also going to use my design team stamp of the month, which is a Concord and Ninth set called Petals and Palettes. And here it is. I also have the coordinating dies for this. I used this set in a previous video. This time I'm actually going to use the palette die. It's so cute. But first things first, I'm going to cut out some blue cardstock with this slimline wonky stitched die. I'm going to have to cut this panel down a little bit to make it fit into my Sizzix Big Shot machine. And as it is, I do have to cut it out twice because it is so long. I cut out one end and then I flip my cutting pads and cut out the other end. And here it is. Isn't that just darling? I love wonky stitched dies. I also cut out my palette dies with some white cardstock. I'm going to do a little bit of stamping on these. I pulled out one of the wood grain stamps, and I'm going to be inking that up with some Distress Oxide ink. This one is called Hickory Smoke, and it's a pretty gray color. This is such a long stamp, it doesn't even fit on my acrylic block, but that's okay. I just need it to cover these palette die cuts. So I'll flip that over and stamp that out. Even if I don't get this perfectly aligned, it's okay. It'll just add to the distressed charm of this piece, but look how cute that looks. I'll stamp this out 2 more times on this die cut piece. This is such a fun stamp. I just love it. And then once I'm done with all of my stamping, I am going to cut these pieces down to size so that they fit on my slimline card panel. On each palette, I'm going to stamp out a sentiment. This is going to end up saying, "Forever grateful to you." And I love the font of these sentiments. I'm attaching these to some green cardstock. I just wanted to look like they were full of foliage, and so you can't see the blue cardstock behind it. This will just help to make it look like there's more greenery inside these palettes. And then once the glue is dry, I can cut off the excess. And I'm going to glue these down flat onto my blue card panel. I'm only going to glue the bottom of these palettes down because I'm going to be tucking some flowers behind them. So I didn't want to glue them completely down. I sped this up for the sake of time. It did take me a while, but now I can add all of my pre-stamped and pre-die cut flowers. I did add some dimension to these flowers with some colored pencils. I added shadows on these flower petals, and it sure adds a lot to the flowers. I had a lot of these flowers left over from my last video where I used these, and I'll have a link to that at the end of this video. And now I can attach this to a white card base, and I'm just using liquid glue to do this. I used 2 different sizes of water droplets on these flowers. I really love how they look on flowers especially. And you can barely see the palettes for all of these flowers, but I just love how this one turned out. I used some leftover flowers on the inside of this card. I usually do a close-up on my finished cards, but these are so long that I can't, or I would cut off some of the card. On card number 2, I'm going to use this diagonal stencil. I love diagonal stripes, especially with flowers. And I'm using a piece of Lavender Fields cardstock from My Favorite Things. And this is actually Lavender Fields ink. This will give me a subtle tone-on-tone look. And actually, it turns out to be a little too subtle. And I have to come in with some chipped sapphire. You kind of have to hold the stencil in place and then brush away from you along the grain of the stencil, if you will. I'm just using a baby wipe to get the ink off my fingers so I don't transfer it anywhere else. And then I can just carefully peel off this stencil. I just used some washi tape to tape this in place. And now I can put this card together. I stamped and fussy cut out 2 stems, and I need them to meet in the middle, so I'm carefully aligning them. I end up pulling this one up a little bit so that I can put some ribbon behind it. I'm just going to put down a dab of glue to adhere the second one down. And then where it crisscrosses, I'm going to tie a bow. I have some beautiful white ribbon. I could have just tied a bow and adhered it down with a glue dot, but for some reason I like to go around the actual stamps. I think that it's going to hold it in place better. And now I can carefully tie my bow, and I want it to be kind of small. I actually do end up putting a glue dot down behind my stems and behind the ribbon. And now I can cut off the ends of my bow. I'll put a little more glue behind the stems. Just little dots of it. And then I can start adhering the flowers. This pink one I'm going to adhere down flat onto the card panel. And then for the second one, I'm going to pull out some foam pieces and pop this flower up just a little bit. I like to add lots of fun dimension to these cards. These hydrangea flowers are so beautiful, and they have lots of little blossoms on them. And you can see where I added some dimension on just some of the blossoms. I darkened them up just a little bit. I added colored pencil to my leaves as well, and it makes them look just a little more realistic. I'll adhere these down flat around the flowers. It just needed a little more greenery around these flowers. I usually leave the sentiment for the very end, and I was lucky that this beautiful forever sentiment fit up at the top. It kind of curves around the flowers, and I really liked that effect. So I pulled out my regular sized Misty to do this. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is a nice dark ink. And I do end up stamping it out twice, but I just show it once here. I'm also going to put a little sentiment at the bottom. It says friends. The sentiments that come in this stamp set are fabulous. You can just mix and match them or use them on their own. I decided to add a few of the little single blossoms around this panel. And I'm just going to glue them down flat. I'm just putting down 3 of them. Odd numbers do look better than even numbers. I'm going to adhere this panel down onto my white card base with more liquid adhesive. It just helps you wiggle it into place. Sometimes with a dot liner, I have a hard time getting it on straight. But here is my finished card. You gotta love those stripes and florals together. They just look fabulous. I'm using the second striped stencil on my last card. This is a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm just using some black soot distress oxide on this panel now. I don't want this to be a solid black striped piece. I just want it to look kind of distressed, and look how fun that looks once you pull up the stencil. I just love it. I have another palette that I cut out with brown cardstock and stamped with brown ink. And I'm going to pop this up with some Arteza foam tape. I cut out more stems and a few daisies. I also added colored pencil dimension to these cute daisies. I'm going to adhere the flowers to their stems first. I haven't attached the palette yet. I need to figure out where I want to place these flowers before I adhere that down. This first flower I'm adhering down with some liquid glue. I love those against the black stripes. And then this second flower, I put some foam tape behind it so it's popped up a little bit, as well as my third flower. Then I'll add a little bit of glue to the stem. I want these to be all different heights, but I don't want to have to cut any off the sides, so I'm making sure to keep them within the panel. And now I can pull off the release paper and adhere this palette down. I'm going to adhere the leaves down flat too. I added dimension to these petals with a blue colored pencil. The blue looked really pretty with this dark green ink that I used to stamp them out. And now I can put this back into my MISTI and stamp out my sentiment. It's going to say grateful, and it fits just perfectly in between these stripes, and I just loved how cute that looked. I'll stamp it up twice to get it nice and dark. And that's all there is to this card. I'm just going to add it to another white card base. If you're interested in picking up any of these products, I have a coupon code for you at the Not Too Shabby shop, and it's good for 10% off your purchase. Or if you just want to go look around and see what's in the shop, there's always fun products to see there. I'm adding a few fortune teller enamel dots around this panel. These are also from Trinity Stamps. These are my favorite lately. I use them a lot. I'll have all of the links to these products listed below and over at my blog. The last touch to this card is a little bit of Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen. Thanks for stopping by, my crafty friends. I hope you enjoyed my card projects and were inspired to create some fun cards of your own. Take care and stay crafty, everyone. Bye.